All right, happy Wednesday. Today we're going to be talking about overcoming overwhelm. And I know this is a fun topic for this time of the semester and this time of the academic year when things can certainly feel overwhelming. My name is Abby Horton, and I am pleased to be your wellness class educator here at the University of Alabama, one of many of the folks that deliver y'all content. I'm also a registered nurse. I teach here at the Capstone College of Nursing at UA. I'm a certified health and life coach, and I'm also a Wellbeing ambassador for the Honors College. So welcome and happy you're here. So today's webinar goals, we're really going to talk about the impact of overwhelm, what overwhelm is, and how we can start to identify those kind of signs and symptoms in ourselves and in our lives. We'll talk about how to manage our overwhelm, both at home and at work. And we're going to talk about specific strategies that we can use to develop and support positive coping strategies. So we'll talk about some stress, we'll talk about habits, we'll talk about a lot of different things that we have covered in other talks, but we're going to specifically get a really practical view of how do we stop this cycle of what we probably see as overwhelm and chaos in our lives. So, of course, when we talk about mental health, it's so important that we talk about when we need to get help. So, if you can answer yes to any of these things here, if you're feeling overly sad or angry or overwhelmed, or not yourself for long periods of time, using unhealthy coping mechanisms, if you've had a loss, you're grieving, you've experienced a trauma or major life event, or you've stopped doing things that you normally enjoy and past coping strategies aren't helping, you may want to seek some professional help. You may need some additional support. And so there are lots of things that you can do. Of course, we have a lot of, good resources here at the university through American Behavioral Health. There's appointments and counselors available here in network in Tuscaloosa that you can see in person or on a similar platform to Zoom, but with confidentiality, and HIPAA compliant software. There's also a 24/7 wellness support chat and just tons and tons of, resources and information available to you. So we just want you to kind of think about that if you are someone that needs some additional assistance. Okay, I'm going to make sure that the chat is good. I see some things there. Okay, yes, thank you, Ashley. Ashley is on the call with us today, and she does a phenomenal job from Wellness and Work Life. So we're so excited to have her here today. Before we talk about overwhelm, I really want you to think about your mindset. And I use this graphic in about half of my classes because I think mindset is really the foundation for all good things that we want to do, whether it's habit change or weight loss or fitness goals or, something more specific. When we get our mindset right, that is the first step of sometimes the process that it takes to really start to take control of our lives. And so the goal for us is not that we're going to get rid of all of our negative thoughts or feelings or emotions, or that we're going to be 100% stress-free, because that's not realistic. But we really want to think about our responses to the stresses that we have. And so don't worry about the things that you can't control, but really focus your time and attention on what you can control. And sometimes that's not as much as we would like to. Okay, I see some questions and I'll come back to those at the end. So things that we can control: your attitude, your actions, your behavior, the things that you eat, the things that you choose not to eat, who you follow or unfollow on social media or maybe even news channels, the things that you react to, the healthy boundaries that you set, how you speak to yourself and others, how you think about yourself, how you think about other people. Those are all things that are within your control. And then this diagram at the end is a Venn diagram that I really love that shows you that where you want to focus your attention is really on the things that matter and the things that you can control, because there are things in your life that you can control that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, and there are things that matter that you have absolutely no control over. So you really want to spend your time and attention on where those two things overlap. So ask yourself, does this matter, and is this something I can control? And if it isn't something you can control, think about how you can control your mindset or your perspective and your thoughts about that situation. Okay, so overwhelm. What is it? Feeling overwhelmed and, feeling overcome by this intense, unruly emotion is something that's really challenging to manage. And it's something that you often associate as being overwhelmed. And so when does it happen? It often happens when our stressors are more than what we can manage. So it's when our coping mechanisms are overwhelmed or overstimulated to the point that we can't really make action. We can't really make good decisions, and we just feel like the world is kind of closing in on us. A lot of times people will equate the feeling of overwhelmed with that feeling of drowning. They just don't see a way out. And so how do you start to address this? I just want to mention that overwhelm is different than anxiety and depression. Overwhelm is not a clinical diagnosis, but it can feel a lot like anxiety and depression. And so you kind of have to ask yourself, is there something more going on, or am I just in a season of life that's a little more challenging? And that's really important to think about. So, seeds of overwhelm, I often like to equate our life with a garden. So, you'll see in my presentations, there are a lot of garden analogies. And the seasons that we go through, we can have more overwhelm than others. The seeds of overwhelm really can be unrealistic expectations for ourselves and for others. It's very stressful when you put expectations on people and those expectations aren't met. So yes, it's overwhelming when we put expectations on ourselves and don't meet those, or when we're trying to meet those and we can't. But think about if you have a spouse or partner, are you putting unrealistic expectations on them right now? Are you doing it to children if you have children? Are you doing it to family members or friends or coworkers? Because that's going to create overwhelm in your life if you are. Are you taking on too much responsibility and commitments? That's something I have to ask myself a lot, because I say yes a lot because I love being busy. I love being productive. I love helping others. And yes is an automatic response for me. And so I have to think about, is this a best yes? Is this where I need to be saying yes in my life? Because when we say yes, we're also saying no. We're saying no to extra time at home. We're saying no to self-care sometimes. We're saying no to other really good things in life. Maybe we're saying no to exercise because we're staying late to help with something else, or any of those examples could really be about too much responsibility and commitment when we're saying yes a lot. And are we putting too much pressure on ourselves and others? Are we seeking perfectionism? And for me, I will say I'm probably a recovering perfectionist. I like for things to be perfect. I don't expect that from others, but I like it for myself. And it's not realistic, right? Because we're human. Being human means that we're flawed. We have mistakes. We make mistakes. We make poor decisions. We have limited perceptions sometimes and perspectives. And, we are going to have this human experience of feeling all the emotions and making those mistakes, right? And so perfection is not possible. Are we unwilling to let go of control? If you're perfectionistic, if you're putting a lot of pressure on others, probably if you're responsible for other people, if you're responsible for people at work or people at home, you probably are having to really think about how much control you let go of. Are you an overachiever? If you are in academia, most of us probably are. That can really feed that, sense of overwhelm. And then, do we glorify busy? Y'all, in the US, we have this glorification of busy like no other. And so a lot of times we like to be busy. And so I am one of those people, and I would like to say I'm recovering on that, but I still really do enjoy being very busy and productive, and I bet you do too. We feel good about ourselves when we're busy. We feel like we're contributing when we're busy. But really start to think about, is this something I want to be busy doing? Do I really want to be busy, volunteering for this thing on the weekend? Or do I really want to be busy going to all these social events, during non-COVID times? Do I really want to be busy taking on this extra responsibility if it's not something that's really something I'm passionate about? And those are all things to consider when you think about the seeds of overwhelm, because it really starts here with mindset. And I say this because you can still really be productive and achieving and be a great team worker and team player and colleague and parent and friend and still take time for yourselves. So sources of overwhelm could really look like relationship challenges. Certainly that's a big one. I think relationship, health, and finances are really the three things that come up for me the most often when I'm talking to others. Physical or mental illness or health concerns, challenges can be very difficult to manage sometimes. Of course, our work responsibilities can be challenging. Our nutrition, certainly we're getting more and more information about what we should or shouldn't be doing. And anytime we use the word should, I want you to think about what your statement is, because when we say should, there's a lot of shame that can go around that. We should have done this or we should have done that. Notice if you're feeling shame when you say that, because a lot of times those two things are linked. We can have some financial concerns. Certainly we have those with day-to-day stressors and extra financial responsibilities because of the impact of COVID or maybe childcare, significant life changes. I think we've all faced those this past year. Time constraints is always a huge one for people because you're balancing and juggling a lot of different responsibilities and commitments. Grief can be very challenging and can lead to overwhelm because you have this, mourning period that's expected, but when that mourning period is over, it doesn't mean that your grief or your loss feels any less impactful. I know for me personally, I've had a couple of significant losses this past year, COVID related and not related, and that's been very challenging for me personally. And so when I think about encouraging other people, I would say to just take time to really think about where you are in life and what it is you need in this moment, because that might be different for day to day. Personal traumas and challenges, sleep disturbances have been something that's been very common during this last year. And then pandemic life in general has been a challenge. There are many other sources of overwhelm for everyone on the call today. There probably are many more that we could talk about, but these are some of the big ones that I see a lot in terms of, coaching clients and helping our patients, students and colleagues. These are some very typical sources of overwhelm that you're going to hear in conversation. And then symptoms of overwhelm, again, could be very individual for you, but signs and symptoms of anxiety or depression or stress will show up. Negative emotions, anger, fear, guilt, or shame can be a part of that experience. But I also want to normalize the fact that we are going to feel anger and fear and guilt and shame at times. And that's okay, because we have this notion right now that we're supposed to be happy and joyful 24/7, 365. And that is not really realistic of the human experience. You might be overly tearful or crying a lot, and that can be a sign if that's not something that's your typical norm. You can end up withdrawing or using maladaptive coping. So this could be food or alcohol or, sleeping more than you normally would. Any of those kinds of things that are not positive coping that you're using to make yourself feel a little bit better, it can be a maladaptive coping mechanism. So it's important to take inventory and think, what are my sources of overwhelm? Where am I planting seeds of overwhelm in my life? Where am I kind of contributing to that? And then, do I have any symptoms of overwhelm? And if so, what are those? So to stop the overwhelm, I think you really have to cultivate a sense of self-awareness. And for many of us who are productive and high achieving, that can be challenging to stop the overwhelm because we're really actively participating in the cycle. And it really can be a source of pride for us that we are so busy and that we can handle so much. So you may need to reach out to a coworker, a friend, a spouse, a partner, to help you identify those moments where you are feeding the seeds of overwhelm, where you are planting those, and where you could really stop and kind of think about maybe pulling back for a season and taking some time for yourself. So for me, I have to do that because I can be very self-aware, but in moments where I'm busy and stressed, we stop thinking about that. We stop reflecting, and it's nice to have someone that we know, that we have a trusting relationship with, like an accountability partner that can say, hey, you seem a little stressed. Are you okay? Do you need to talk about anything? That can be the reality check that you need to start to make some changes in your life. And once you've done that, you're going to continue to need to do that if that's your baseline personality, because that's not going to go away. That's going to be a part of your journey. So acknowledge and accept your feelings, whatever those feelings, that you're having are. Again, all emotions are part of the human experience. So if you're anger, feel your anger. If you're fearful, accept that you're feeling fearful in the moment. And it doesn't mean that you accept it and you stay kind of rooted in that. It just means that you acknowledge it, you accept it. You know what? I'm feeling fearful right now. I'm feeling anxious. That's okay. I know why I am. Maybe name the thing that's causing the fear and anxiety, and then decide how you're going to respond. So reframe your thoughts and ask yourself if the thought that you're having is helpful. And likely, if it's more negative or fearful or anxious based, it's probably not a helpful thought, and it may not even be true. It may just be what you're feeling in the moment. And once you can reframe your thought, just take a brain break. Take 10 or 15 minutes to unplug, to take a walk, take a nap, take some small action steps to get unstuck. Because when we have a stress response, we often hear about, the fight or flight response, but more often than not, people actually freeze. And when you freeze, the solution to that is that you actually have to do something. You have to get up out of the spot that you're in, and you have to take action. And moving your body, even if it's not formal exercise, is one of the best ways to get unstuck and get out of that negative thought loop that you might be having. A lot of times we also just need to be present in the moment. So our culture is really geared around being futuristic and future minded. How many of y'all are like that? It's always about what's next on the to-do list, what's happening over the weekend, what are our 5-year goals, what is it going to be like a few years from now when we get this promotion or this accomplishment. We can be very future oriented, and that is great when it comes to work and it comes to productivity and high achieving. That's amazing. But when you're living your everyday life in the future, it can be really challenging because we're designed to be in the present moment. So I like to tell people you need to be present where your feet are, and your feet aren't in the future, and it's not in the past either. So others of us are more past focused or past oriented, and that really can look like wishing for a different time when life was easier, or before COVID or things like that. So people, and this is not correlated to clinical diagnoses, but people who have symptoms of depression a lot of times are more past oriented and think about the past with more of those rose colored glasses. And people who are more future oriented can have more of those anxiety symptoms because you're anxious and fearful about the future. Of course, those are just the symptoms. That's not if you have clinical diagnoses of depression and anxiety, which is related to more of a chemical imbalance. But we're talking about part of the human experience is having symptoms of depression and anxiety at times, having some of those down moments and not feeling so, great about different things in life. We can have those moments where we feel depressed or anxious without having that true clinical diagnosis. But it's important for us to be aware of those emotions to see if there is a bigger problem going on. Maybe it's something physical. Maybe it's something with your mental health that is contributing to those feelings of anxiety and depression and overwhelm. Or maybe it's just simply situational. Maybe it has to do with the pandemic. I see a lot of people who are struggling with things that were problematic for them before the pandemic, but now the pandemic has just amplified those problems, right? And so those are all things you need to be asking yourself, and you're the only person who can answer those questions. And so be empowered and encouraged to be your own advocate, because you are the expert of your life. There's no one else who is more of an expert than you are. And there is no more important relationship than the relationship that you have with yourself, because it is the longest relationship that you'll ever have. And I think it's important to note that, because a lot of times we prioritize other relationships. We prioritize, relationships with our family, with our friends, with our kids, with our spouses, partners, people at work. But really, the only person who's going to spend every day with you is you. And so you want to make yourself the priority. And that doesn't mean that you're selfish. It just means that you're understanding that when you take care of yourself, you can then be the best version of you, and you can then pour out from that place of having been a priority. And so a lot of counselors will ask you what's important now. And so that is the acronym WIN. So how can you win in this moment? When you're stressed and overwhelmed, ask yourself, how do I win? What's most important right now? And for me, when I feel that way and I write that down on a piece of paper, what's most important for me right now is that, and I'll think about my list, like what is happening today that has to get done before I go to bed. And if you can think about it in those terms, and you're not thinking about what you have to do tomorrow or the next day or next week or next year, but just, Abby, what is it that you have to do by tonight before you can go to bed to get all of that off of your plate? What are the things that need to happen? And if you can do that and make a short list, you will have such a practical approach to managing your overwhelm, because most of the time we're overwhelmed about how we're going to meet the demands of tomorrow, and we're not actually doing the things we need to do today. And I say that as someone who does that. So I have to remind myself. And then know your resources, know your skill set, and know when and where to ask for help. Sometimes we don't like to ask for help, and that's okay, but we've got to learn. I'm a nurse, and nurses love to help people, but we also can be the most stubborn about asking for help, because we identify as being the helpers, and helpers don't want to ask anyone else for help because that's so much a part of our identity. And I bet that's true of a lot of professions and a lot of people who are in academia. A lot of us are very, other oriented and like to serve. And so we may have trouble asking other people to give us some support. So a path forward, there are so many things that we could talk about in terms of conquering overwhelm. But if you're like me, I think so many times when we focus on all of the things that we can do, we actually overwhelm ourselves to the point of not taking action. So I intentionally made this presentation be a little more simple than a typical webinar, because I want you to leave feeling encouraged. I want you to have this information as a reminder, probably of things you already know. You may not learn a lot of new stuff today, but I want you to feel really re-inspired to prioritize your health and your well-being, and to start to take steps toward making sure overwhelm isn't a part of your everyday. So I want you to push pause. Stop living on autopilot and be really conscious of yourself and your life and your decisions. And so get to know yourself again. And I know that sounds silly, but oftentimes we know other people better than we know ourselves. We know more about what other people like than what we like. And so taking time to self-reflect, to journal, to practice gratitude are all great ways to reset and get to know ourselves. Doing a brain download, jot down your thoughts, your feelings, and your to-dos. Everything that comes through your brain, just write it down. It doesn't matter if it's unorganized. It doesn't matter if it's messy. It doesn't matter if it's incomplete. Just everything that's popping into your brain, set a timer, and get it on paper. That will do a lot to help you feel better about where you are. And then once you've done that, you can really pinpoint the primary source of your overwhelm. So I didn't list these in numbered steps, but I really listed these the way that I would approach it. And you can make this be whatever you want it to be. This is like a menu for you. So just choose what resonates with you, and leave the rest. So if you want to do one of these steps and not the other, that's completely fine. But I put it in the order of how I would approach it. You really want to challenge your assumptions. What are you assuming about a situation or about yourself that you need to fix? Maybe you're assuming that you have to be responsible for everything at your house. Maybe you're assuming that you have to say yes to that project at work. Challenge those assumptions and then actually go and ask and investigate. Is that true? Maybe you don't have to be the one who picks up the kids from carpool every day. Set those healthy boundaries once you've done these other steps, and then really prioritize what's important. The definition of priority is that you can only have one thing. So when we say priorities, it's really kind of a misnomer because you can only have one priority at a time. And what is that priority for you? If you're feeling really overwhelmed, then your priority needs to be to stop the bleeding. That's what we would say in nursing. Stop the bleeding. Where are you bleeding from? Where are your resources being withdrawn the most? Stop the bleeding there. That's your number one priority. And then figuring out how to move forward is your next priority once you've accomplished that. Delegate, delete, or delay. So this is very effective, but something that we don't do a lot of. And if you're like me, when I first started kind of changing my life a few years ago on my own health and wellness journey, I thought, desperately, I don't have anyone to delegate to, right? I don't have an assistant that I can delegate work to. I don't have someone at home that I can delegate, household responsibilities to. And I don't have anyone that I can delegate to in the form of paying for someone to do that. That wasn't in the budget. So how can I delegate? And I got really hung up on that. Sometimes we like to get hung up on what we can't do and we don't focus on what we can do. And so I had a good friend that said, delegation doesn't mean that you have paid help. It might just mean that you barter and swap. And so for me, delegation became about connecting with other friends and other mothers who were in similar phases of life that needed things that I could provide that were easy for me. And they could help me in ways that were easy for them, right? So for other moms and friends, they were really great at, planning meals and getting, that kind of thing together. Just homemaking was a skill set for them. So making extra lasagna and dropping it off at my house was something that they could do when my kids were really little. But that's not something that I necessarily enjoy, but there were other things that I could do for them. Like I love to plan birthday parties and to help with organization. And so I can organize your pantry, but I don't necessarily want to make the lasagna. So delegation can look like a lot of different things. So my point in sharing that story is if you get hung up on one of these things like I did, like I can't do that, that's not feasible for me, figure out a workaround. Delete. What are the things that we think, we assume we have to do that we really don't have to? We don't have to be Pinterest parents. We don't have to be room parents. We don't have to be on the PTO. We don't have to coach every, soccer game. We don't have to attend every wedding or family function. We don't have to make it to every work, social or things like that during non-COVID times. We don't have to do some things, and we can take some of those off of our plates. So think about what's your best yes. We can also delay. There are a couple of goals that I have. I bet you have some goals too, that right now, it's just not the time to pursue those. There's some certifications that I want to get. There are some classes I want to take. And right now, it's just not the season for taking on extra responsibilities. So instead of constantly thinking about those things, have a file on your computer or in your notes app on your phone and write down just like a delay list. These are the things that I want off of my brain that I can't really do right now, but I'm going to come back to those when it's a different season of life. And that will really clear up some brain space for you so that you're not constantly rehashing those things. Our brains are computers that are meant to process information. Our brains are not great storage devices. And so we often think that. We often think that our brains are designed to store things, but they're not. Our brains are really just processors. And we really need to find other systems to store the amount of information that we have today. Our brains have not really changed and evolved to the point that we can be a human internet and a human computer. And so process everything in your brain and then have systems to hold the information so that you're not having to constantly hold on and revisit that. There's some great information. There's even a fun TED talk on rumination and how we ruminate about things because our brains just can't let them go. That's because we don't have a system to attack those problems. You also want to minimize distractions. Look at how much you're spending on your phone. Pull up that report. Do y'all get that on Sunday morning that tells you how much you've been on the phone that week? That's not always a great way to start your Sunday if your times have been up. But look at that report. Are you on your phone, on tech, on devices, on social media? Most people will see changes in their mood really decline particularly after being on Facebook, but after being on social media in general. It's important to stay connected. It's important to stay informed, but you may need to take extended breaks from social media and the news. Take frequent brain breaks throughout the day and week, at least morning, noon, and, kind of in the evenings. Take 10 or 15 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day, to give your brain a break. I always tell people that meditation is for the mind what sleep is for the body. I think meditation is really important. A lot of times we hit snooze, we wake up, and once we have hit our alarm, we are go, go, go all day long until it's time to go to bed. And then we shut everything down and we wonder why we lay awake in bed at night. And it's because we have exhausted ourselves. And then we cut the lights off. We flip the switch literally, and we expect our bodies to be able to go to sleep. And that's not how we're designed. If you have babies in your life, you know that they have routines, that they wind down, they read a book, or you read a book to them. You apply lotion. You might give them a warm bath. You might give them some milk. You might sing to them or rock them to sleep and change into dedicated pajamas. We do all of those amazing things for a sleep routine for babies and toddlers, and then we don't do them for ourselves. We could benefit from the same routine with very similar activities at night to cue our brain it's time to get into rest mode. So, no blue light exposure after 9, and really powering down, putting our phones away, charging our phones in another room, all great things to do to kind of disconnect. Apply the 5-minute rule. If you can do it in 5 minutes, then don't write it on your to-do list or wait till later. Go ahead and do it right then. If you think I need to make a phone call and you have the time to do it, go ahead and make that phone call. If you need to send that email, go ahead and send it. If it's not going to take more than 5 minutes, just go ahead and do it. If you're like me and you need to track your progress, after you've done it, write it down and then cross it out. Step outside the box, get a new perspective. So maybe you aren't seeing your situation for what it is. Maybe you need to make a phone call. Maybe you need to reach out to a friend. Maybe you need to crowdsource some help, but get more perspective on your situation. You want to cultivate silence and solitude. For a lot of us, we are not in the season of silence and solitude. And so you may need to take some time to do that. For me, on my drive home, that is my me time. I live about 20 minutes away, and that is just enough time for me to listen to a podcast, a short one, or to listen to some music. And if I need some extra time, I might run an errand, which I love errands, or, might go grab some coffee or, treat myself to something, a snack or something on my way home to get a little extra time so that I can transition from work to home. And then I even have a ritual for transitioning from home to work because, we can't really bento box our lives. Things are going to bleed over and spill over into each other. You're going to bring work home some days. You're going to bring home to work other days. And that's okay, but it's just about centering yourself and making sure that you can transition as easily as you can, because that is a part of the human experience. Focusing on your needs, your mental and your physical health needs, is really important. And then tracking and managing your time. If you don't know where your time is going, and you're not managing it, you're not time blocking what you're doing, you're not automating your routines and habits, then you're going to have a difficult time finding margin in your day to take good care of yourself. And then I also want to tell you to consume less. We like to research and we like to consume information in academia. We're kind of geared toward that. We're trained to consume information and research. But in our everyday life, if we continually consume more information than we produce, that can actually lead to overwhelm. So sometimes you just need to get as much information as you can, give yourself a time limit, and then make a decision. And realize that there are going to be times when you do make mistakes. You're going to buy the wrong vacuum cleaner, or you're going to, choose the wrong golf clubs or shoes or something like that. And that's okay. That's just, again, a part of being human. And then practical next steps. So I like to tell people to get dressed to shoes every morning. If you follow the Fly Lady, she has a cleaning routine and she says get dressed to shoes every morning because it really helps you with your mindset. And I think that's important whether it's a Saturday at home or whether it's a work day at home or whether you're going into the office. The sooner that you can get dressed and get your shoes on, I think the more productive your day is. For me, that also coincides with wearing a watch. I wear a watch when I need to be productive. And so the act of putting a watch on for me is a signal that I'm in work mode. I also like to use it to set alarm reminders and just to stay on track with things. And I have a pair of shoes that they're like Vans or Converse shoes. And my friend group and I have this kind of joke that we call them our hustle shoes because we wear them when we're in work mode. And so if you ever see me with shoes that look very similar to this photo, then you know I'm in hustle mode. I'm working on my to-do list that day. And so it's little fun things like that that can really help boost your productivity. Even though it's silly, it does a lot and goes a long way in terms of getting you prepared and ready to attack your day and kind of meet your adversity head on. So schedule everything and time block your day, like I mentioned. If it's not on your calendar, it's likely to not get done. The reason that you get a lot done at work is because there's structure there. You have meetings that are planned. You have Zooms that are scheduled. You have deadlines. You need to set those kinds of things in your everyday personal life too, and you'll really see your productivity increase. So if you want to have time to meet friends for coffee and lunch, if you want to have time to spend, with a spouse or a child or a family member, if you want to have time to exercise or get coffee, put those in your calendar, in your planner, whatever you use to keep track of your appointments. Put that there so that it's really an appointment. Make appointments with yourself and keep them just like you would an appointment with someone else, because that's going to be how you actually start to make different changes in your life that's going to add up to a lot of progress at the end of this journey with your overwhelm. You also really want to start organizing your space at home and work and in your car. A lot of us live in our cars, so we're always going. And so having a clean, tidy, decluttered space is really important because our outer environment is often a reflection of our inner world. So if we're living in chaos, we're often probably very chaotic internally too. You also want to just track your daily habits and take inventory of your life. What feels like it's missing, what feels like it's too much. Automate your routines and rhythms as much as you can. So, know that you're going to grocery shop every Saturday morning. You're going to meet a friend for coffee, every last Thursday of the month. You're going to have date night every other Friday. Sunday, you're going to have a family meeting and you're going to plan your week and sync your calendars and check the weather. Those are the kinds of things, cleaning routines, those are the kinds of things that you need to think about in terms of automation. And then prepare the night before. So if you're not a morning person, and many of us aren't, then preparing the night before can be really helpful. Make sure that you have a hook by the door for your keys. Make sure you pack your bag or your purse or backpack the night before. If you can leave some things in your car, that's amazing. Like I said, having an idea of what the weather is going to do. Like today, I bet many of us had to change our outfits for the day because it was a little colder than we expected. Picking out those outfits and knowing that you have clean clothes for the week does a lot of good for the brain. Have some check-ins with your family and friends. Use chore charts and cleaning routines. Carve out space for thinking and decision making. If you have a partner or spouse, it can be really important, especially when you're busy and you have different schedules, to have dedicated time to think and make decisions about your family and your work life and your personal life. Because if you're just trying to find time during the day between dinner and other responsibilities, particularly if you have children or other family that you're caregiving for, it can be really difficult if you're trying to cook dinner and manage kids and make really important decisions. And so have dedicated time and space to do that so that you're not having those difficult conversations or important conversations while trying to multitask. That's going to increase your stress and the likelihood that that can lead to some arguments or misunderstandings. And then when you start to feel overwhelmed by even tackling overwhelm, pick one thing and just get started and commit to stop researching, commit to just doing the thing imperfectly. And you'll learn and you'll improve, and it'll just be a part of your journey. You also need to remember that you're enough just as you are, and that there's nothing that you have to do to prove your worth. You are inherently worthy just by being here. And so practice good self-care, practice wellness basics like sleep and hydration and nourishment, moving your body every day, even if it's just a dance party while you're cooking dinner in your kitchen. Meditation a few minutes a day, 3 to 5 minutes, is really impactful. You can use apps like Calm and Headspace in My Life, which I think are really important for you. And then repeat affirmations. And, here are a few for you to choose from, but you're welcome to think of your own. There's so many out there available today, but these are some that are going to really help you feel confident about yourself. Saying, today I'm strong. Today I choose what goes on my calendar. It's okay to rest. Today I choose joy. Those are all really, really important things that we need to tell ourselves. So oftentimes we stop trusting ourselves because we don't keep our promises. We say that we're going to work out, or we say that we're going to meet our friend for dinner, or we say that we're going to, be on time to, whatever family event. And every time we don't keep those promises to ourselves, we really erode our self-trust and our self-confidence. And so we can regain that self-trust and that self-confidence by building in small wins and taking small actions. So when we say we're going to make that call, make it. When we say we're going to be on time to that family event, be on time as much as you can be. Really commit to yourself, and you'll start to see your confidence and your self-trust be reestablished. And that is going to really make a huge mark in your life. You're going to really start to get control of your overwhelm, because you're going to realize that you can trust yourself and that you can depend on yourself. When you promise that you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And I bet you do that at work, and I bet you do that for other people, but maybe not for yourselves. So some recommended reading, I really would recommend reading them in the order that I have on the screen. So Burnout to Breakthrough is a really quick read. I read it in a couple of hours one afternoon recently, and I thought it was a really great book to think about how you start to control overwhelm in your life. And then Spark Joy and the Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up are both really good books. The caveat here is I would read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up first, because it was published first, and then Spark Joy. And these 3 books on the right are all by the same author. And then the last is Joy at Work, and it talks about how to conquer overwhelm, not just at work, but at home. But it has a lot of really practical solutions and organization principles for how to get organized and get on top of your schedule so that you can have more of a personal life and start to really have a more balanced life. So it's really that work-life balance guide that we've all been looking for. I've read all 4 of these books, and I would say that of the books that I read, these have been the 4 that have helped me the most on my journey. So there are some resources here. Again, wellness basics that I listed out for you, and then some coping strategies that I think are important. Again, you are welcome to take a screenshot, or we can share the presentation with you later. But these are just some fun things. I love listening to music. I think music and yoga and meditation are three of the best things that you can do in terms of, really getting a handle on your stress and your overwhelm. Music has been therapeutic and has been proven to help with relaxation and just uh, really kind of counterbalancing the stress response that we can have. And then again, carving out time to take care of meditation and journaling and gratitude practice. Research has shown that when we're grateful, it's very difficult to be stressed. So a gratitude practice is really important. And then just be engaged and be present. Be present where your feet are. So try to stay in the here and now. Try to connect with your network, with your friends and family. Unplug, disconnect from social media and from your phone so that you can have some good time to relax and set healthy boundaries around your schedules. And then again, just get out in nature, walk, move your body. Those are all great things to try. This is a TED Talk by Carol Dweck. She's a leading psychologist that talks about mindset. I highly recommend. It's just about 10 minutes long, and it really does help you understand why mindset is foundational to all habit change. And then this TED Talk on stress, it's called How to Make Stress Your Friend by Kelly McGonigal. And it talks about how stress is really neutral and necessary for life. And I think it helps you reframe the importance of stress in your life. We would love for you to follow us on our social media channels. Ashley Bowman is on the call today, and she manages the social for the Wellness and Work Life office and does a phenomenal job. So we would love for you to connect on these channels. And then we would be happy to take any questions you have. I saw some hands raised and I see some comments in the chat, so I'm going to go there while y'all think of some other questions. All right. Yes, and I see that Ashley mentioned that you can get the slides. Just email wellness@ua.edu. All right, I think the first question is with Jacqueline or comment. I have an issue with walking or waking early morning and not going back to sleep right away and begin thinking about the day ahead or the past. Any suggestions? Yes, try to not get on your phone if you wake up. You also want to think about having like a dim night light next to your bed where you can turn it on if you need to jot down some things. Sometimes just doing a brain dump can really help. Getting out of your bed and going getting some hot tea, or just sitting quietly somewhere reading something really boring, something that's going to not be overly stimulating to you can be very helpful. But I think a lot of times it's just not getting on your phone, not checking the time, and really getting whatever is bothering you out on paper and then trying to go back to sleep may be really helpful, Jacqueline. It's helped me, and I know other people have tried it with a lot of great success. And then we've got Melanie taken care of. Yes, Allison, the presentation will be available on the wellness.ua.edu site. So this is being recorded and it will be archived there so you can go back and listen. Thanks for the question. Yes, Dawn, practical next steps, you can get those. Thank you, Ken. I'm so glad you came for the presentation. Thanks, Jerry. Other questions or feedback? I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, and you're welcome to put those in the chat. Thank you, Ruth. Just give you all a couple of minutes to get your questions in. Oh, thank you. I got a question, but it was just saying thank you for the presentation. Thank you so much. I appreciate y'all attending. Thank you, Kelly. All right. You're welcome, Jennifer. I hope y'all enjoy the book recommendations. They're really easy reads. I started reading the first one, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, in 2015, and it was really the very beginning of my journey toward health and wellness and really changing my life and getting control of my life. I have 5 young children and have had a lot of different life events that have happened over the last 15 years. And so about 2015 is when I really realized I had to start taking care of myself and prioritizing my well-being. And, it was baby steps all along the way. Laura Casey is someone I love to follow. She's a social media influencer and does a lot around habit change. And she says small progress is still progress, and little by little it adds up. And I think that's so true. So don't get overwhelmed by trying to tackle the overwhelm, just one step at a time. Yeah, Hannah, thank you so much for that. I'm happy to do these presentations. I wish that I had had someone to offer a few nuggets when I started my journey. So I try to make it practical because that's what we need, right? We talk about problems a lot, but really sometimes we just need encouragement and some solutions. Thank you, Melanie. Thanks for the feedback. Yes, I'm all about practical. I want you to leave feeling encouraged and to have a little bit of a checklist that you can have as a guidepost. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions or comments, then we'll go ahead and start to close out for today. If you think of something that you would like to ask or you just didn't want to ask in this platform, you're welcome to reach out. My email is abby.horton@ua.edu, and I absolutely love hearing from y'all. For me personally, it is a joy to get to teach these wellness webinars. It's one of the highlights of my week. Because again, it's getting to pour into people who are very like-minded, who need a little encouragement and assistance like I need and like I have needed over the last 5 years in this journey. And so please feel free to reach out. We do have health and life coaching available as part of your employee benefit that's completely free to you. So if you'd like to have health and life coaching with me, you'd like to set up an appointment for that, you're welcome to email me and we can discuss some times. I do those over Zoom, and you get a 9-month program with about 4 to 6 visits for free. And so that's something that we are offering through Wellness and Work Life. And we're happy to just answer general questions or offer other tips or feedback if you have personal questions that would need a little more nuanced coaching. We're happy to answer those as well. Thank y'all so much for being here, for your great questions, your engagement, and your kind feedback. I'm happy to be here, and I wish y'all all the best. Roll Tide. Bye, guys.